My day job is that I am a staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Services Disaster Relief Team. But part of the reason I'm also here is I am the chair of Hillsborough's COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster, and Pinellas County's BOAD, which is Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster. I will not get into the metallic stearates thing today, but they're essentially the same thing, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on that as we go through the panel. But basically what it is exactly what it sounds like. It's an organization of community organizations getting together to communicate effectively to respond to disasters.
Wonderful. I'm Jessica Muroff. I'm the CEO for United Way Suncoast. We cover 5 counties here in West Central Florida, including Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and DeSoto. We are the lead of the COAD in Manatee County, but we are the backbone organization for the long-term recovery groups in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. We do a lot of fundraising when it comes to disaster response and resiliency. And last year with Hurricanes Hilton and Helene, we already invested more than $1 million in recovery to our nonprofit partners, and we're going to be investing $1 million more in the coming months to our nonprofit partners to help our communities recover, because there's still a lot that is needed to be done.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Katya Miller. I'm the Operations Section Chief for Hillsborough County's Office of Emergency Management. So I have some folks here with me today, our Logistics Section Chief, Mike Lackey, and our Outreach and Education Coordinator, Trey Lawson, who partners with our Hillsborough COAD team with John. And we are your emergency management team for Hillsborough County. We deal and plan for disasters all year round, not just 6 months out of the year for hurricanes, but as John mentioned during his opening remarks, for all hazards that could impact Hillsborough County. And so we're here today to hopefully share some information and educate on how you can connect with us and how we can help one another in response to these types of incidents.
Good morning. My name is April McCullis. I'm the local outreach director at Grace Family Church. We have 8 locations. 5 are in Hillsborough County, 2 are in Pasco, and 1 is in Pinellas. And like many of you church leaders in the room, we learned we did not know what we did not know in 2024. So I've been able to work with John on a few different initiatives, but got to be part of those daily calls with COAD and get the updates with Respond Together. We did our best to leverage resources, our people, information, all of the things that many of us did. And we've been going through a process of really assessing our response and figuring out what we need to put in place, what infrastructure do we need to build within our church community to be able to respond more effectively next time. And then also just like blue skies, what can we do right now to serve our communities better in a more coordinated way? So I'm excited to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, I should say we asked April to join this just on behalf of Faith Communities. They did a lot through this last year and have been organizing quite a bit in a way that I think is a great model and exemplary, something we would hope to see more of. And so we wanted to invite her to kind of engage in this conversation from the perspective of Faith Community. Sweet. So let's start, Katya. If we let's just say I know how you know probably more than most how important communication and coordination is during disaster response. And I'm just curious how you think a network of churches, something like Respond Together, if we can really build out a strong network, how this might be helpful in strengthening the county's ability to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that may not know what emergency management is, I like to think of us as kind of these puppeteers behind a disaster. A lot of people don't know that we're there, but we serve as a central hub for communication collection to ensure that we have good situational awareness and a common operating picture out in the community. We serve as a resource management hub for that as well. And then just a center that is really having key players to come together to make sure that we are prioritizing effectively and really serving those impacted areas out in the community and making sure that we're streamlining our objectives so that we're really able to make those impacts, right? And oftentimes, and this happens really at every level of government and nonprofit or faith-based, it's very easy for us to focus in on only what we do, right? Or you can think of that as working within a silo, right? And that's never a good thing. the more that we are able to connect with one another, the broader we're going to be able to serve and impact the community. And so with emergency management and our emergency operations center, we serve and we work out of our headquarters off of Columbus and Falkenberg here in Hillsborough County. But this is a Cat 5 rated building, no windows. I'll tell you, I didn't go outside for like a week, I think, between Helene and Milton. Don't recommend, get some sunshine, people. But to that point, we don't know what is happening out in the community without those that we're working with responding back to us, right? And letting us know what's going on. And, you know, we all know this. Everybody has their networks, their communities, their friends, and those that they trust. And local government is not necessarily that first person, right? People out in the community are much more likely to communicate with their neighbors, with their churches, with nonprofit organizations that are serving them on a day-to-day basis. And so if we can partner together with those organizations and build that network and make it even bigger, and we create a streamlined communication process from us at the EOC to the community back, then we're able to better get that common operating picture and that situational awareness of where the need really is out in the community. And then we can be that force multiplier in partnership with you, with our resources and our resource management and our capabilities to really help you and to help the communities more effectively.
And so this was like a big, like when I first showed up on, so then the way that you guys do that is through these kind of COAD calls. This is one of the mechanisms with which you work with the nonprofit, ESF 15, right? The support function 15 is what they call this, like the nonprofits, the churches, the kind of like other folks that are out in the communities, organizations, which meet with a COAD. And so I show up on this call and literally was like, tell me everything. And I was like, wait, they're asking a lot of stuff. And I was like, dude. And so, John, I'm curious from the kind of COAD, BOAD standpoint, you know, I think it would be great if everybody is on all of these calls. This would be ideal. But there is a reality, I think, with some of these communities that we've been talking to, is like, it's not going to be realistic that they're all going to show up. And part of the reason we're thinking like, hey, we build this network of relationships throughout these churches and faith communities. But for maybe leaders, faith leaders that maybe they're not all part of that, how would you advise faith leaders to stay connected, and how do you see like a network like Respond Together being helpful to the work with COAD and BOAD, even if they're not all on all of these calls?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was going to tell the story that you told. And it's your own story, so I was just going to steal it.
Steal it? Yeah.
Well, you already told it. Was
That's
this,
true.
the surprise, really, of coming onto the call and, you know, us asking you for information rather than providing you a lot of it. And I just kind of want to reiterate a lot of what I'm just saying everything that's been said. I'm going to go, nothing original. But it really is important to have local leaders at the table, because I don't know your neighbors. You know your neighbors. Your neighbors trust you as faith leaders. And that's the thing that you can really bring to the table, even if you have no other experience with disaster response, recovery, anything like that. And because you're busy, you know, with your community, understand it can be difficult to make all these meetings. And trust me, right now there are enough meetings. In Hillsborough County alone, with the COAD and the long-term recovery group, you know, there are 2 meetings a month, and those meetings are several hours on your day. When a disaster actually occurs, we're having daily meetings. There's the state BOAD, there's the local BOAD, national BOAD, all the BOAD, remember this voluntary organizations active in disaster thing, all having calls. So I'm on meetings for like 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitoring this stuff. You guys can't be doing that. I understand that. So just because you can't make every meeting, first of all, doesn't mean it's not a good idea to get plugged in once. And by that I mean just contact us at your local COAD, which if it's Hillsborough County, that's going to be Hillsborough COAD through me. Even if you can't make every meeting, even if you can't be here in blue skies with us doing these regular meetings, we do send out, first of all, information on a fairly regular basis, just through emails, keeping you kind of up to date on what's going on. So even if you can't make every meeting, it's still good to get plugged in initially. But an organization like this will allow you to get that information disseminated through that network. So if you don't have the time for the COAD meetings every month, or again, in the aftermath of a disaster, daily, it's still a good idea to get involved in your network of faith-based organizations, because somebody's going to be at those COAD meetings. Somebody's going to have that information. And if you're plugged into a network where that information is going, it's going to get to you. And conversely, that's going to allow you to be plugged into that network in advance to get your information from your local community back up that chain. And that's going to get your community that much more help, that much faster. And that's really what we're looking for. Again, we don't know your neighbors. You know your neighbors. Your neighbors, first of all, don't trust me at all. I'm a lawyer. So I can't go around door to door, make those knocks, and I don't have the time to do the ministering that you do in your local community. You can build that trust. You can learn those needs in a way that we can't. And there's a good reason you don't have that time. So use that time to do what you need to do, but plug into that network. Make sure that you're at least able to get the information. If you can join us, we'll be happy to have you. By the way, the next Hillsborough COAD meeting is 1 p.m. next Tuesday down at the EOC, so if you can't join us in person, feel free. Also, should probably mention, you just show up. It's not something where you have to pay dues or anything like that. It's just information that's there. We're not trying to exclude anybody. But getting plugged into those networks, getting plugged into a network like this, if you can't make those meetings, is still going to allow you to have access to the network, both to receive information, and more importantly, to give information so we can get your community help.
Awesome, thank you. So Jessica, I know United Way really, to the same theme, is to emphasize really breaking the kind of silos and isolation. And so, and you guys have been invested in kind of this effort, even with us, to go, and thank you for that, to be able to go, hey, we're going to try to knock on the doors of the churches, and we're going to try to say, hey, we need you. We need you. And really appreciate that kind of investment and partnership with us. And I'm just curious how you see a network of churches Respond Together helping to turn isolated congregations into connected assets in kind of the larger resilience ecosystem.
It's critical, and I'm going to copy a lot of what you just shared. Disasters isolate people both physically, emotionally, spiritually, and these networks are absolutely critical for several reasons. It turns that isolation into a sense of belonging. That story that you told about the music, that's healing, and it's important when it comes to recovery. Networks like this are really important for, number one, information sharing. You are trusted messengers of information, of helping us to quickly spread accurate information and resources across your network. Resource mapping is also important. I can't tell you how many times post-storm I get calls for organizations across the country who want to help our community with resources, and when I can tap into networks like yours and offer up 50 solar power generators, that is a critical line of network that I can get those resources out to you very quickly. So being able to have some resource mapping about what resources that you have, what you can offer, how you can mobilize volunteers, and mapping that out ahead of time is really critical, so that when you walk into having to respond to a disaster, you can mobilize quickly. That neighbor-to-neighbor care is really important. Like John said, you really know your neighbors, and having a system by which you are already mobilized to respond and to check on people. We have that on our team. We have a whole tree by which we check on every single person within our organization post-disaster. That can be similarly done within neighborhoods as well. So checking in on elderly single parents, families without transportation. This network is really helping us to ensure that no one is overlooked post-storm. And then, you can't underscore enough the spiritual and emotional support that is needed for families and individuals and recovery, and you're a tremendous resource for that. And you're also helping us to bridge systems between nonprofit organizations, our government entities who are providing support and resources, our emergency responders, so that we can turn this network into really valuable assets to support our community.
Love it, thank you. So April, you're coming from the church side of things. She's with Grace Family Church. It's quite a large church. They have 8 campuses, is that right? And so you guys kind of, at some level, like are a network unto yourselves. And it isn't hard to imagine a church of that scale or a church doing a phenomenal job in their own efforts, which you guys have been, to kind of have a sense of like, well, why would we need to be part of a network? Why would we, like, why do we need you little guys or something like that? And I'm curious from your efforts, especially over the last year, how do you see the value from the perspective of a church with that kind of reach and impact, and like you guys are already resourced and doing all these things? Like, what is the value of a network for you guys, and why would this be important to you?
Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna go be a little historical for a minute. We learned a lot during the pandemic. So because we're a larger church, we were tapped on the shoulders by World Vision, I think, to be a central hub for the Farms to Family program, to be a hub of distribution of fresh food boxes. And we were able to say yes because we have the bandwidth to say yes, and we could staff it. But what I found in saying yes to 2 weekly, basically 48 pallets of fresh food that had to be turned around very quickly, we found that we could say yes to that. But if I didn't have a network with smaller churches and nonprofits who had the relational inroads, we still, at our size, could not distribute the food effectively, and we couldn't get it to kind of like the last mile. So we could do the drive-through food distributions, okay, but I knew experientially we had refugee families in Temple Terrace, we had migrant families in Dade City, and we had a lot of folks who would not hop in a car in 2020, 2021 to do a little drive-through. So I knew we could check a box and say, yeah, World Vision, we'll push out $1 million worth of cold food over the next year. I could check that box. However, I also knew that the people who were in the most need were that last rung, and I didn't have the relational capital or trust with them to get the food to where it's needed most. And so we learned that, and I ended up leaning into those relationships with nonprofits who are, people who are leading them who are bivocational, right? They can barely fill out a Form 990. But those were the people, and those were the pastors who had the deep relationship. So we invited them to come and collect food and learned a lot in the process. So going through this storm, a different kind of storm, I knew again, we'll be tapped on the shoulder. Hey, we want to send you these trucks of resources, and we need to figure out how to say yes very quickly, and then turn around and say, hey, churches, why don't you come and receive? And so that was what I felt an obligation to do that, to be part of the bigger church win, because we were known and trusted, and we did receive calls from all over the country. Hey, we want to send this. And for whatever reason, for better or worse, there were a lot of folks who were like, we don't want to send this food to a nonprofit. Or in fact, Elizabeth Dunn said, we are receiving phone calls where people want to make donations, but as a government entity, we can't say yes. So can you guys receive these goods? So I felt like it was kind of our duty to say yes, and then to turn around to our friends and say, all right, we're holding the food, we're holding the water, we're holding the hygiene products. Here's where we are, come and pick it up to serve your communities. And I was reminded that it was needed. We had a pastor from Dade City who came down to our Temple Terrace location. We just set up 3 pods in the parking lot and had a bunch of stuff. And he came down and loaded up his little F-150. And I think I don't remember, maybe 20 of his families, their homes were still underwater. This is 4 weeks later. They still had water damage in their homes, and they were still dealing with muck and gut, insurance adjusters. There were some families we found 3 weeks after the storm who still didn't have power. I didn't have the relational reach to get to those families, but my friend in Dade City did. And so we were able to share resources, to share information, and I learned a lot, and I was like, well, we want to do better next time. So
We do want to do better next time. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think and by the way, I just want to echo the sense of duty and responsibility. That's kind of the thing we're really trying to emphasize for all of us to go, like, we have a duty to respond to the needs of our neighbors, and I hope that kind of call resonates with all of us, and the duty to like reach the next church over and kind of share the same thing, to go, we, at different scales and for different reasons, we have that duty to respond. So there's some friction that I ran into. And John, I want to ask you to speak to this, maybe both hats, like as lawyer and as co-ad, but like liability. So one of the things we ran into with churches is like concern. They're like, well, if we use our building, like what's our exposure? If people are coming here, like, I don't know, even if they're in our parking lot or whatever, there was like we've never thought about this. We have no idea. And I would like to just ask you, like, is there, like, what kind of things exist there? Is there ways that communicating with the EOC is helpful? And can you talk to us a little bit about that exposure?
Yeah, sure. Part of what I want to talk about, just a little bit in terms of what you're saying, is you see a lot of that friction, people asking those questions when they hadn't thought about it before. And just to kind of go back again, the communication part, coming in advance, getting to know everybody in advance, becoming a part of this network is going to really help with that, getting that information ahead of time so that you're not scrambling at the end. Because there are some liability issues that are very real. Not quite so much when you're talking about acting as a donations warehouse, but if you're actually engaging in active sheltering operations, there are a lot of questions there. Things that you'll want to do, for instance, actually take a look at your insurance policies for your buildings and everything like that. That's a very vague piece of advice, I understand, very obvious, but it can really depend on what exactly your individual coverage is. One thing, though, when it comes to communicating with the EOC, is in terms of liability, that can be a major free pass. I don't know, is everybody here familiar with, or have you heard of the Good Samaritan Law? So one of the big aspects of that is obviously in the aftermath of disaster, you have individual volunteers and everything like that that's going to cover them if they're responding. But one of the other things that it does is it also creates a liability shield if your organization is acting in conjunction with local emergency management, and you're part of that plan. The Good Samaritan Law will apply to you there too. So if you're in contact with the EOC, if you are becoming part of that plan, then you have a major leg up in terms of addressing some of these concerns. So talking to the EOC and becoming a part of that plan, both in terms of getting the information that you need in advance, becoming a part of that network, making sure the resources are allocated as efficiently as possible, just in terms of your own protection as an organization. Talking to the EOC is not a small thing. And if you're considering doing this at all, you really, really should, because it's gonna provide you a tremendous advantage. It's gonna make it a lot easier for you to do this stuff, both practically speaking and to cover yourself in terms of liability.
Do you want to add anything to that? I mean, we're talking to the EOC. What does that look like?
So I guess the best conduit really to get started with that is going to be the Hillsborough Co-ed, because of John and because of Trey, who is, that's his dedicated position in our emergency management team. And when we activate, he still is overseeing our emergency support function 15 that John mentioned, that looks at that volunteer and that donations component. And that Hillsborough Co-ed connection. So Trey is the one that is leading those local calls that we're having daily and other information that is coming directly from our team out to our networks that we have. And so really, I mean, I can just echo what John is saying. We want to know you guys. We want to talk to you. And as we said earlier, during a disaster is not the best time to do it. Are we still wanting you to contact us? Yes, but is it going to be as effective? Are we gonna have more time to execute good plans? No, we're not, right? And so let's take the other 6 months out of the year that we're not in hurricane season to make sure that we can communicate effectively, but we can also help one another. And it's not so overwhelming for you to dive into the massive world that is emergency management. There's so many facets to it, and I think that goes into, everybody has a role, right? And we teach that. If you guys have ever taken any of, the basic FEMA classes, and this goes into John's recommendation of, how do you train yourselves, your leadership, your congregation? How do you encourage training for your neighbors, right? Every person has a role. And FEMA's terminology for this is called whole community, which is what we're talking about here today, right? How do we effectively utilize the whole community? And the whole community goes down to the individual level. And, you know, we have some people in our community that may think that, you know, the government is going to do everything for them, that they're there to assist them. And at the end of the day, we don't have that capacity, right? That's why we communicate with people to be self-sufficient for 7 days. And when we're communicating evacuation orders and different things like that, but in reality, not everybody's going to listen to those things, right? So we have to think in that perspective too. Who's still left behind that is most vulnerable, that may be dealing with other things in their life that is just making their situation even more worse off. And we have to continue to plan for those things. So it comes to individual ownership and resiliency as well. What are you doing for yourself, for your family, for your neighbors, for your church, for your congregation, for your neighbors, that is making them more resilient, and it's going to allow the community to jump back faster and better and recover better, right? Because we never want to just recover where we were before the incident. We want to recover better because we don't want to experience the same thing from happening again, right? We don't want Groundhog's Day. Nobody likes Groundhog's Day, right? So,
It's a good movie.
yeah, it's a good movie, but I don't want it in real life, right?
Right.
So, you know, we've had this conversation about, you know, well, I'm a small congregation, I'm a small church. I don't feel like I will have a lot of impact. And so, you know, let's look at these different phases and pieces and components of what you can do. So it, again, starts at the individual level. You may have a small congregation and you say, hey guys, let's take a training. Let's go to a CPR class. Let's contact the Emergency Operations Center. And that's something that, oh, by the way, we also do for the community. We do outreach and education and training all year round for the community. So we can organize a CPR class for you. We can organize and host a community emergency response team training. And we have some of our teams here today. You can talk to some of our community emergency response team leaders in the community who have, you know, done a great job, and our CERT teams are all different sizes, and they all have different goals and missions that they're comfortable in doing. So not every CERT team is even cut from the same cloth, right? So you may have a group of just 20 people, and you can do a lot with 20 people. You can look on the outreach and education side. You're plugged into the EOC, and we simply give you a copy of our disaster guides that we publish every single year. And you guys help distribute that to your congregation. That's 20 more people that are now more disaster resilient, that are potentially making a plan, right? And so it goes from big to small. Any small thing that you guys do is going to reach one more person in our almost 1.6 million people that we have now here in Hillsborough County. And Hillsborough County is a very special place, right? We have a lot of demographics. You know, we have a large elderly population. I just found out the other day that we have the largest population of blind and deaf demographics in the state of Florida. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. Didn't know that we were the largest, right? We have so many languages here. You have folks within your congregation that are bilingual, huge resource that you could provide to the Emergency Operations Center with various resources and services that we're trying to provide. You know, we have the 7th largest school district in the nation. We have the 2nd largest refugee population in the state of Florida. We have critical infrastructure. We have urban areas in the city of Tampa. We have agriculture, right? I mean, Hillsborough is amazing of all the things that we have, but it also means that we need a lot more people to help and make sure that we're reaching all of those different demographics in our community. So I don't want anybody to feel that they're insufficient. One volunteer will find a place for you, and we'll partner you with an organization.
That's great, thank you. So Jessica, I know a lot of church leaders might get asked by their congregation, like, what does it actually look like for us to be prepared? So I'm just wondering, like, beyond like some bottled water and some flashlights, like, what would you hope to see every household and every congregation do as kind of a baseline level of preparation?
Well, first and foremost, have a plan. Like, I think too often we're just like, okay, we'll think about it when, because we get days before a hurricane comes and like,
Plenty of time.
well, we got plenty of time to figure out how we're gonna respond to this. No, have a plan. And there's a lot of resources. You just mentioned some great resources on our website. We have a whole disaster resiliency page that has sample plans, a ton of resources.
Incredible resource.
And that page gets updated almost hourly, right before, during, and after a storm of a ton of community resources where you can find food. But I could list all the different things, but first and foremost, have a plan. And I'll tell you a quick story. Hurricane Ian, I'm embarrassed to admit this. My husband and I evacuated with our children and our animals, and his mother also evacuated. And I just assumed, like, he had the information. No, he had zero information about where his mom was going and who she was staying with. So the storm passes. She actually went to Northport. So she actually went to the place that the storm hit the hardest. And we did not hear from her for 3 days. It was the scariest thing, and I was so upset with my husband. I'm like, never again will we ever not know, like, and communicate with somebody about where you're evacuating to. So that designated out-of-town contact and knowing where your family is and having that plan in place is critically important. You never want to be in that situation where, communication lines are down, and it was truly down. Could not reach her, and then we finally did. Protecting your documents. We do a lot of hurricane kits, so waterproof documents that can store your IDs, insurance, prescriptions, all of these things in waterproof bags for quick access. My husband and I made a life binder, and we have a couple of copies of it that has all of our important information and documents, so we can just grab it and go. Staying connected. There's a lot of different alert systems. Hillsborough County has some great ones that you can sign up for, that you can get updates on weather, whether it be flood, any kind of weather related or other disaster response. You can get texts and encourage your congregations to also stay connected to those alert systems, because that's going to give you verified real-time information. And then, as we've been talking about throughout this panel, is building those community ties and committing to checking in on your neighbors before, during, and after the storm. And then the financial readiness piece, because making sure that you have a plan for how you're going to have resources, cash and other things if our just financial infrastructure is down, the ATMs or other cards that may not work. We have a plan for that in our organization. It's also important to have a personal plan too. But you have a ton of resources on our website, on our emergency management team's websites to get a base plan in place, and that's the biggest thing that I would recommend.
Thank you for that. And I guess while we're dreaming, while we're wishing, like, what would you like to see, thinking of as a baseline congregational response, like availability to the community response kind of after the fact?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also, this is not just for individuals, our disaster resiliency plans are also for organizations. So you can download what we have and customize it to your own organization, but that continuity and communications plan, we have a continuity of operations plan that is embedded within our disaster resiliency guide, and it literally lists step by step. And we literally go through this in every aspect before, during, and after storm with my leadership team of what steps we're taking to respond. So there's a sample on our website that you can download and have that. We also have internet and battery backups for our leadership teams, so that there is that accessibility. We have that network among our teams so that we can keep communication lines open and know who's contacting who within the organization. Again, these are things that you all can replicate. We have a preparedness hub, ways that we support our own team, because if we're not investing in the leadership of our organization, we can't serve others. So we have to have a plan for making sure that our team, every position in our organization has somebody who's their assigned backup in a disaster. They know who that is and they know how to activate. And so that way we can keep our operations going in the midst of a disaster, but also being there to support our team members who might be impacted by the disaster. So our volunteer mobilization system, we have this too, so we can get volunteers mobilized quickly. I would just encourage in any kind of shape or form that you all can do that as well within your congregations. And that training piece is really important. We train in Blue Skies constantly, so that when, this season hits, we're ready to go. We have pre-mapped partnerships. We have asset maps for all the counties that we serve so that we can get to our partners and share that information really quickly. So those are some of the things.
That's great. Thank you. April, I saw you kind of like smiling and winking at some of your team back here. I'm curious, I wanted to ask you and just invite you to share. You guys have been building kind of neighborhood response teams throughout your own church. Can you just tell us a bit about that effort, kind of what you're hearing, how this kind of maps to you, but also like how that might be adapted for maybe smaller congregations?
Yes, for sure. But I will tell you why I was laughing.
Okay.
So Scott and I have been working for, 4 months on our standard operating procedure internally for Grace Family Church, with pre-storm, during storm, immediately after, and then post. And I've been meeting with all our central departments. Hey guys, can you please fill out your fields? And so I'm just laughing because I'm like, oh cool, someone already filled this out. I'm so glad I'm here on this panel with you, Jessica. I love that. So we will definitely be checking out what you have and cross-checking and seeing where our blind spots are. So thanks for that. Thank you for having me up here so I could learn this. Okay, so yes, one of the things that we learned, biggest takeaway, I think, one of the biggest takeaways after going through 2024 was we did not have the leadership infrastructure to deploy volunteers to help the way we needed to, the way we wanted to. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming for you, but as I'm sure your phone was ringing off the hook with people who were saying, I need help. And then we had a huge volume of folks who were saying, I want to help. And we realized very quickly we were bottlenecking a response. So our church, we have 10,000 active attendees, and we had so many more people who wanted to get out and help where the needs were. And we didn't have the leadership in place to be able to mobilize them and deploy them. And then we had so many people saying, we need help, or my neighbor is still underwater. Do you have volunteers? So we did the best we could, just like you guys did the best you could. And then we reflected on this and said we need to build out some leadership. So in response to that takeaway, we built out something. It is not revolutionary, but we're calling it neighborhood response teams. And neighborhood response teams are not technically, forgive me, I'm borrowing language maybe I don't deserve to use. They're not necessarily mapped out by neighborhood. So we don't have a neighborhood response team for town and country, or for, we're not actually tying them to neighbors. But because we're a multi-site church, we are tying them to the different locations that we have. And we are actively training leaders right now to be able to recruit volunteers, to identify opportunities, and then to go and do work. It's labor-based assistance, safely, respectfully, effectively. And so what we're doing is we're leveraging Blue Skies. We're using this gray sky, blue sky situation. Some guys, some ladies are super motivated to jump in and get into the action during a gray sky response. That's wonderful, and we're saying, hey, we know you wanted to do more, or you did a ton in 2024. Why don't you join a neighborhood response team, and let's talk about what it looks like to serve our community right now during Blue Skies. So we are building relationships with city code enforcement. City of Tampa has I don't know if you guys know this, is Christine here? I think she said she's gonna come. So maybe she'll come, but there's a whole full-time position at Code Enforcement for Hillsborough County, Christine. She's an outreach specialist. So her entire job is to identify families who are experiencing hardship, and she's been trying to mobilize volunteers. So we have this connection now where she's referring families, single moms, elderly, vulnerable people, folks who just cannot take care of whatever the city code enforcement violation is. She's identifying them, and she's starting to refer them to us. And then I'm equipping mostly men. We believe women can do this too, but we've got guys who are rising to the occasion, and they're going and claiming these projects and taking them on. And are meeting real needs. We just had a neighborhood response team project a couple weeks ago. My friend Steve took that project on. The woman lived like a stone's throw from Maggiano's, West Shore Boulevard. The city code enforcement violation was related to yard work. Her lawnmower became waterlogged, and so she couldn't maintain her yard. So it was a very simple, like, few-hour project. Mow her lawn, remove some mattresses. Steve said yes. He rounded up a few volunteers from his Bible study, and they went out to help. But I went to go visit this woman, and she said, "Do you want to see the inside of my house?" This was August 12th, so is that 2 or 3 weeks ago? I'm not sure. So I was like, "Sure, I'll sit with you." I walked in, it was like November 2024. Y'all, her floors had been ripped up, very, very little furniture. It was hot because her air conditioning unit flooded. She didn't have any functional appliances. She had an Instant Pot. You know, I love an Instant Pot. Plugged into her counter. That's what she was doing to cook. But I was like, "Oh, where are you staying?" She was like, "Here or at my friend's house. We're bopping around." Her daughter had just gotten a cancer diagnosis, and she said, "I don't have time to fight with insurance for the next disbursement. I'm managing her treatment plan." And so that guest was referred to us by Shalette Love Inc. And so that was very sobering for me, because I'm like, how are we here in August 2025 and people are living like this? That broke my heart. And it really reinforced this idea that, there are people who want to help within our congregations who just need a model of leadership. And so if we can figure that out and invite them into the opportunity, we can also respect their time and give them a start and an end time, right? Here's what we're doing. We could see more volunteers come forward. And then B, the need is still so, it's massive. And so having this relationship with city code enforcement is great, because Christine said, "I'm going to talk to the officer and give a 30-day extension." So I'm staying in touch with this woman, but that's basically what we're trying to build out right now. I would be happy to connect with you at any point during, like, at lunch or something like this. We're hosting a team leader training this evening from 6 to 8 p.m. at our Land O'Lakes location. We've got our little manual, we've got our first aid kits, we've got our clipboards. From a legal standpoint, we developed a homeowner agreement. So if our team goes out to a house, when they go out to a home, they just write, it's a little written agreement. Here's what our volunteers are gonna do. We're gonna take care of the yard, or we're gonna remove mattresses, or we're gonna assist with this light repair. So they write it out, and then the homeowner signs it, and it's an indemnification, because this is the society we live in, and we do have to check that box. So you can copy that. Like, there's nothing proprietary. Our legal team did look at it, but you're welcome to have that as a template. So I want to resource you if you're interested in what we're doing. Again, y'all are serving your neighbors, so this isn't a revolutionary model, but we realized we had to equip our leaders internally so we could start responding and scaling what the impact looks like in our cities. So.
No, I've been loving watching what you guys are developing, and I know a lot of the things right now are still related to storms, but what I really love about this is, like, it's not necessarily tied around disaster, where you're like, no, year round, we're putting in reps. We know how to work together. Like, just so when those times come, it's not the first time we're shoulder to shoulder, getting dirty, rolling up our sleeves. It's like, and I kind of love that you guys are building this out. So I know I gave you guys a couple other, like, questions here to close out, but what I'd rather do with the time that we have remaining is I'd actually like to open this up. I kind of have a sense that maybe there's things that folks in the room would want to ask. So how about Pastor Gabriel, if you want to get us kicked off?
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for all that you've shared. Of course, like, the need for plans, the resources you guys have to provide, that stuff is valuable, and at the time that our organizations have to implement them, we will. But it seems to me that the most pressing thing is on-the-fly communication to connect need with response. And that was the thing that last year with John and I and some others were just sort of triaging responses, like a lot of churches. That just was like, it wasn't just lacking, it was like almost non-existent. So, like, yeah, I'm glad that, like, meetings are available that people can plug into, but, like, we need, like, a WhatsApp thread or, like, a text chain or, like, something where there's a record of communications and it's on the fly and people can catch it when they pass a cell tower that's active and the message gets on there. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like that needs more attention. That's kind of my question / thought.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to kind of grab that from the COAB perspective, because that's definitely something that kind of came up for us as well at the during the 2024 response. And one thing, just to not quite directly address, which I will in just a second, is so particularly important about this kind of organization, is because if you can't make those meetings, because you're not necessarily going to be at the cell phone tower, have availability to get on at 3 p.m. every Tuesday or whatever, because you're out doing the work that you're doing. I can tell you who is going to be at that meeting, John, every time, and he's going to have you plugged in and be able to get that information to you that way. The other thing that we're working on is just through basic functionality of Microsoft Teams. Trying to build that out right now, is to have that rolling chat in there, so to have those records, the recordings, everything. So if you do miss that, if you can't plug in at the time, as you're having needs between meetings, because even daily meetings aren't necessarily enough to have those needs. Some of them are pretty immediate. To have that in place so that you can at least check in, have that update, like you said, as you pass a tower. But that one basic solution to that is through that Teams chat. And we are working right now on building that out to be a little more functional. Some of the issues that we ran into were like if it's internal to an organization, external partners can't necessarily update it regularly. So all that is kind of being reworked. Part of that is the COAD previous in 2024 was just a loose organization of people. There was no 501c3, there was no nonprofit form or anything like that. It was just people who would come together. That has changed. There is a 501c3 that is plugged in to have actual access to resources, to have the financial capability to build that out as well. So that is something that we did notice. The stopgap right now is using that Teams chat. That is something that we are aware of and trying to build out further. That felt kind of rambly. Does anybody else have anything more?
Yeah, I want to add to that too. So again, I think something to keep in mind is that there's not always going to be only one method or one trick pony that's going to be the best way to get the information in, right? And so we kind of have to be aware and educated and utilize all the ways that we can get the information to those that can, make it happen. And so obviously from John's perspective, from the COAD perspective, that's where we try to streamline nonprofits and faith-based organizations so that it can get directly into the Office of Emergency Management, but there are other ways, right? So something as simple as our 833 HC Storm, if you guys remember that. We were like chanting that last year, right? Call 833 HC Storm. That's the call center line that is covering the entire county, where folks are able to report directly what their needs are, and it's documented straight into our electronic, pretty much emergency operations center, our web EOC system, where we have people monitoring that, and it will go straight to the ESF 15, volunteer and donations. It'll go straight to our mass care team, whoever it may be, for that assistance. So that's one way. Second way we had last year was our self-reporting tool. If you guys remember that, that was the survey that people could fill out. They could let us know what damages they had on their homes, but we also asked them the specific question of whether they had any unmet needs. We had over 17,000 people report into that survey, and we set up with volunteers through our CERT teams and others that were coming into the EOC, and we set up a call center through our Everbridge system that was calling these people back and asking them, do you still need assistance? We were sending them information on services. We were connecting them with other organizations and nonprofits that were providing assistance. And outside of that, sometimes it's the connections that we're talking about right now. John called me through Elizabeth Dunn at 10 o'clock at night on Friday. Called me about Cinnamon Cove in University area. And I was like half asleep. And I'm like, John, hi. I think that's actually how we formally met, was over the phone.
So
Elizabeth was like, hi, this is John. I'm like, hi, I'm Katya. And they told me about what was going on. And I got on the phone with our people, and the next day we had American Red Cross that was setting up mobile food distribution through the community. We had our capacity path and our crisis and stress management teams going out to these neighbors to do crisis management and emotional and spiritual care. We had Salvation Army supporting. I mean, we were doing all kinds of different things. Yeah.
You had our executive director of Romney,
Yep.
Refugee and Migrant Women's Initiative, so she was able to come and translate and provide
Yeah.
that like cultural connection for
Yep.
the migrants who were there. So
Yeah.
it was a really comprehensive response.
Yeah, and that's just one example, right? This is just but it's those connections of you can just pick up the phone and you can say, hey, these people have been missed somehow,
Yeah.
right? We just found them. And this happens every single incident. We had, I think it was during Ian, and it always is at night for whatever reason, right? It's always at night. It's always on a Friday or a Saturday when people are trying to get a little bit of sleep, but that's when it happens, right? But we get a call that somebody had driven by this community and they saw neighbors that were dumpster diving. And we sent somebody out there from our team because obviously we have to verify the information, we have to see what's going on. And sure enough, these people had been without food for at least a week. They didn't have any water, nothing. And we sent resources out there. We dropped a pallet of resources to just get them food and distribution. And so these are the things, and you guys probably heard this last year too, not just the comfort stations, but we had coined what we call these pop-up pods, right? We had the big drive-through pods out in the community, but we had these pop-up pods where the goal was to partner with organizations directly where you had and you knew where the need was in your community. Maybe it was through your church, your parking lot, whatever it was, and you guys were able to provide the volunteers, you were able to provide that workforce, and we could come drop off the commodities that were needed, and you guys were able to distribute that, right? Again, these force multipliers. We had a church in Thenonasassa. A gentleman contacted us and he said, hey, this community here in Shangri-La is still flooded. And we knew this. We were driving through, we were providing resources, and our fire rescue team went out there with our amphibious vehicles, those little things that look like boats, right, that are driving around in the water. And we were going door to door, and this woman comes out of her home, and her home wasn't flooded, but she had water surrounding her entire home. She couldn't get out of her home. And we asked her, ma'am, are you okay? And she goes, yes. And then we started asking some more questions. Do you have food? Do you have water? No, I haven't eaten in 5 days. And then we're thinking, oh my gosh, like, she's just sitting in her home and doesn't have food, and we're here, and we didn't even know she was here. And so we coordinated this effort with this gentleman from a church that was down the road, and his neighbors had kayaks and different resources, and we would drop off food, and the neighbors would come and they would take their kayaks and they would get food, and then they would kayak back to their homes. Because we have people that they may be in that situation, but they will not leave their home. Right?
Yeah.
So I cannot stress enough that it can't be just one method, one mode of communication. It has to be this multiple ways of how we're going to communicate in order to effectively address these different scenarios that are happening. And every single storm, there is a new scenario that I come across. I have been in public safety for 11 years. I have been actively responding to hurricanes since Irma. I deployed to Hurricane Michael, so that Phoenix video, that wasn't simulated, all of that. Those images of that beach, that was Mexico Beach in Panama City. I went to that, right? And that is the perfect deployment story to talk about an entire community being so devastated and without a plan that their local services and partners were gone. That entire response was managed by outside agencies coming in. And you have to ask yourself, who's there when those agencies leave? You guys have to be there when the agencies leave, right? And so that's why we're so passionate about having these conversations right now, because we can help each other do that, right? We can be there to help. We can, partner here, and we can say, hey, you're doing group trainings. Let emergency management come in and give a CERT training. Let's even ramp up what training you're giving them right now, right, to make it even more impactful. And so that's really what you guys, I think, can help us do here today, is just continue to spread the message and let us connect with you. and make the relationships.
One of the things give me one second, guys. One of the things I wanted to highlight in that story, though, even like us connecting that way, was because of the connection with Elizabeth and then Ron. There was what actually works is where relationships were established. It's like, oh, that's so. They go pick up my call, my number's in your phone already, and like those are the things that really rapidly worked without just like the organic thing, which is like part of the effort of developing these relationships between this group. So you can go ahead.
I have a couple of observations based on my name is Linda Perez, by the way, and I'm director and the founder of Boricua de Corazon Inc., that is Puerto Rican with our heart. We have a special relation, and we work in the 13th also with the Hillsborough County Fire Department. One of the things that I'm notating, and I want to give John that information, is that a lot of places that have volunteered, they didn't have the release form that they needed to make sure that the volunteers get in that station, everyone that go in there signs that volunteer sheet, and make sure that still that the Good Samaritan apply, still you need to know what happened with that volunteer in case that something happened while they're with us, working in any of the spaces that we create for them, shelter, pub, or any other situation. That's number one. And number two, we are training seniors all over the Hillsborough County with the assistance of the Hillsborough County Fairs, and we are found out that most of them, Spanish or English, doesn't matter, the language, they are not aware about the special need shelter until we get there and we train them and we tell them about the guide and all that they have to do. So we have a good effort now. We have almost in the Hillsborough County, now we are moving to Pinellas, my team, but in Hillsborough County, I wanted to let you know, we already have 1,500 personnel volunteer completely. We don't pay to nobody, but they're fully trained in Spanish and English in order that we can be able to serve it a little bit more once we create this station that we did it last year to bolster it, especially Spanish, because we are seeing a lot of groups that go into us, they don't have no personnel in Spanish, and we have almost more than 26-30% of population that is growing in Hillsborough County, especially in Spanish. So that's one of my concerns, and we create what we call the Spanish Volunteer Disaster Team, that all of them get communicated with us, and if you need one of them, we was able last year to send it to different stations, Plant City, Tarrant Country, Temple Terrace, whichever they needed. Counting on us, we are here to help you in that way. Okay?
Can I just say really quickly too on the documentation of volunteers? First of all, excellent point. I hope everybody caught that, how important it can be to document your volunteers. There are a number of reasons to get that right as well. Not only to protect yourself, be concerned about liability, know where your volunteers are, but that can be really helpful in documenting volunteer hours and getting resources into this community.
That's right.
Too. There's a cost share. When FEMA comes in basically and does the public assistance, generally it's split 75-25. So the local government has to provide 25% of the value of the resources. They can use the value of those volunteer hours to meet that cost share. And if they can do that, more money is available to assist with any number of other things. So I just want to point that out too. Could probably offer an entire training on that as well. But documenting your volunteers, documenting your volunteer hours, good for the county, good for the community, good for your organization.
Could be as simple as just like even in your own little org, just a Google spreadsheet or a form that people just sign, log in, log out, or whatever, just to like log as many of those. Mary, you want to go ahead?
I'm representing Mars Baptist Church, which is really small. We have about 35 members, but I think most of us are really passionate about getting involved in the community. I'm actually the community pastor is my title. And I feel like something, I'm interested in getting involved in VOAD and COAD, which I've never even heard this term before today. So first of all, that's community organization of
Active in
disasters.
disasters. Yep.
And so that would be, and then I'm assuming VOAD would be just as an individual person willing to get involved as opposed to someone representing an organization.
They're essentially the same thing. It's a dumb technical distinction. If you want at lunch, I can tell you all about it if you're curious. But they're both centered on organizations. Churches. Red Cross, United Way, smaller organizations, local, getting together. So it's not on an individual basis typically. So they're more or less the same thing. It is organization based.
And so if Waters Baptist Church wanted to join us, there would be monthly meetings available that, I'm assuming a representative would need to be attending,
Yeah, now we don't have strict requirements for membership. It's really just, here's the invite, please show up, we would love to have you and love to communicate with you. Oh, Trey, it looks like you have your,
Oh, I'll wait till you're done. What did she do?
sorry, what was that?
I'll wait till you're done with her. Let's his question.
Oh, okay. Trey's really involved in it too, that's why I wanted to. But yeah, really all it is a matter of getting on the meetings. And so if you can't make it every month, and kind of what we were saying at the beginning, you're not gonna get kicked out. We want to get you the information, and we want it to the degree that you're able to participate, great. The only thing we do ask is when we get your information, if the information is gonna be changing, please just let us know. Contact people, switch over, because that can be a real issue in response. But yeah, just generally, I can talk to you afterwards generally about getting the information. Really all we need is an email address or something. We can send you out the virtual invite, but it is for Hillsborough, first Tuesday every month, 1 p.m. At the Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah, and I'll add, because you're talking, I think, about like just volunteer interest and, because your congregation is smaller. So again, it's really, if you got with your group of 35 and you had something that you guys were really interested in doing, you can work with us to coordinate that. We could provide you training. We can assist, and the COAD is also a great way to know just who's out there and what organizations. And a lot of times with these responses as well, with folks that just want to help and volunteer, we're assisting with that connection and affiliation, right? And so sometimes it's, hey, Red Cross is looking for volunteers. We got a group of people that want to help. We can affiliate them with Red Cross, and then they can be given a mission. And it also can even go back to that community emergency response team thing. If all 35 of you are like, hey, let's do a training for CERT, and we want to become the Water Avenues Church CERT team. Heck yeah, we'll put you through that training, and then you guys can go on volunteer missions, right? So
That was gonna be my follow-up question was, so if I do get my organization involved in COAD, I would then be able to be connected to somebody to like receive some sort of training.
absolutely, absolutely.
So Trey, do you want to jump in real quick, and then we got one more back here, and then I think we'll probably need to wrap this time. Go for it.
Yeah, just in response to the question about having the communication ongoing. With the COAD meeting, since it's an ongoing meeting, our chat remains open. So you can always go in and review the chat, put things in the chat, so it doesn't close out.
But you have to be on the meeting though, on the
You don't have to be on the meeting. The meeting can be open, but if you have something that you need to go in and communicate, you can go into that team's chat and still send messages.
So you have to have been on a meeting.
You have to be-
yeah.
Okay, I see. So that's a matter of like getting the app set up, and then there's like just a rolling text communication
It's a rolling-
under the app.
If you've
Okay,
been on the meeting at least once, you have access to that chat.
Okay.
to communicate.
thank you.
Yeah, you do have to have access a meeting at one point. But yeah, as long as you access one, even if you miss the next one, you should still have access to the chat.
And there's a lot of great stuff in that thread.
Just briefly, is it possible to add an additional form, or even just one of us can just take that on our own? Because like, there's going to be people in our communities that aren't going to be in those meetings that still could respond, and just boom, 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 get a message to somebody.
This is part of what we're trying to do a better job of going. We're going to build out a bit of a list for.
Yeah.
There's a bit of like, oh, it's redundancy, but it's also not redundancy because we know like I'm not on the call, so I'm like, cool.
Right.
If we're friends, I need to make sure that's getting into your inbox and like leveraging our like the replication is actually just like for the sake of that kind of communication. Is like we all need to be like taking whatever we can get and echoing it to whomever we have their ear.
That's what we did. I joined the calls, I listened, I kind of filtered through what's relevant to my congregation, what's not, and then I would turn around and push out a communication based on what was relevant to our needs at the time. So I think it would have been overwhelming, like none of our pastors wanted, no offense. They were like, we're busy, like, mucking out homes and people in crisis, so I was like the designated volunteer to listen through and then just condense it and give them what they needed, because, all of our attention spans were so limited, so that's how we managed that.
Just a quick question. I live, work, and serve in Pinellas and volunteer at the Grace Family Church in Clearwater. Is there a network like this in Pinellas County and key people we should connect with there?
So this effort with churches, because we're working with Church United, it's actually, there's churches connected throughout 6 counties. That doesn't mean, like, we happen to be like right here, and so we do have folks over from Pinellas, and we have connections in Manatee and all these different places, Hernando, and we're like making these connections, but like it's work to be done. So this is still like, it was really fledgling when it was 15 of us, and like, oh, there's storms, and then like, okay, now there's more of us, and we're just like trying to grow that effort. But then also you have the Pinellas VOAD, which is I would say jump in immediately because they're already connected with a bunch of efforts going on over there. John back here with the Presbytery, they have churches that are over there as well. So a lot, even folks here connected in the room are in these different counties as well.
Yeah, and they have the counterparts on emergency management side there as well. So Mary Burrell is their outreach and education coordinator, and Jessica under her is their whole community coordinator. So they're the ones like mirroring, you know, myself, Trey, and our team on that end of the county, and they do a great job as well with this connection and on the VOAD side. And they have really the originator 501c3 for our area, which is Recover Pinellas, which is, I used to work for the nonprofit long-term recovery group after this. And I want to make one more key, I think, really important topic on the phase that we're in right now, which is recovery, right? We've been talking about this of how many folks are still impacted right now in the communities. So now what's happening is the state has just awarded a organization called Compass 82 to be the case management company in Hillsborough County. And there's different case management organizations that are gonna be assigned to the most impacted counties. And they are looking for data, right? They're looking for information that might be coming from those that applied with FEMA, with other nonprofit organizations, but they may be even looking for data that you have within your organization. So let's say your organization has a list of folks that you've been serving, and you know that these people are still impacted. Through the COADs, with their connection with the long-term recovery groups, you can provide that data for these case management companies to now follow up with these individuals and help them get through their next step in the recovery process and hopefully find additional resources. And we're now in that phase of we're trying to catch those that have fallen through that are now at the bottom of the net, right? And this is the hard part and the long part of recovery. But you guys can also be even a force multiplier in that lens. And so just another thing to consider, keeping the records of those that you're helping within your neighborhood and your congregation, and being involved in the long-term recovery groups and the COADs can get them even to that point.
Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to share all this. Go for it.
Just one more quick thing, and this is a resource that is year-round that I would be remiss if I did not share. 211 is a phone number that you can call 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for any resources that you need. It doesn't need to be disaster-related, but it certainly can be. If anybody is having any hardship that they need to work through or get resources and support for, 211 is the number that they call. I just wanted to share.
No, thank you so
Second
much.
that for sure.
Awesome. If we can just give a round of applause for John and our panel. I do just want to give a little bit of what's coming up next, and also to reiterate some of what's been said here. So we're going to go into lunch, and then we're going to have our simulation training.